All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode 264 for the week of October 23rd. We are headed well into fall. We've got some new releases that came out this week. Whether they're good or bad is up to you. But actually, as we look through things that people have been playing, no one can ever accuse us here on Enough to Keep Going of buying the newest hotness just because. So instead of talking about some of the new games that released this week, we've got some other games to talk about, maybe some games adjacent here to talk about as well, plus the news for the week, along with the rest of the items we've been playing over the course of the past week. And with me tonight, I am so glad not only to be back again, but to have a full chairs with me as well. Towmaster99, Tow, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. I am fighting my allergies though, so I'll probably have to mute a lot so I don't cough. That's
okay. Yeah, it is
all that into the mic.
Cold and flu season, so I'm glad it's just allergies as well,
yeah.
And that's good. And that's why there's a spit guard on the mic as well, so that's good. All right, and other there running the boards is Hamp. Hamp, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I appreciate your opening comments about no need to rush to play the new hotness and then express extreme disappointment because you chose to buy something unwittingly and unknowingly. That might be partly your own accountability. But, it's good to be back. You guys can't hear the intro music, but we had a little bit of the spooky going on for tonight. Since I'm not a big Halloween fan, I figured I'd throw a little bit of that salt in there in case we're not OP for that next week. But we got lots of other games.
And we don't even have that in our news items this week in terms of the Resident Evil showcase and the Silent Hill announcement. So yes, there are some spooky game pieces here that have happened over the course of the last week. And if you are paying attention, chances are the newest hotness that everybody hoped would be wonderful, which turns out to be a live service that was maybe changed halfway through development. No matter how much I want to put on a cool Robin costume or Nightwing costume, I'm going to wait for a sale on Arkham Knights, on Gotham Knights, actually. So, but that is not. Otherwise, I know other people have been playing the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 campaign because it released a week early before the full release of the game. But instead of picking that up, Hamp and Towmaster have both dipped back into Call of Duty from previous generations. So let's start with what I was surprised to see on the MPDs this week. The Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War was above Call of Duty Vanguard in September of 22. So Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War came out in 2020 and is charting not only in the top 10, which is impressive, but also above the Call of Duty that came out in 2021. So Hamp, what brought you back into Cold War?
I've been back on Cold War for quite a bit, at least since the Modern Warfare 2 beta. Cold War, look, this is just my opinion, Cold War is a better game than Vanguard, at least for the multiplayer side. I mean, I've commented about how Vanguard is very cartoony. It's the character models and kinematics and that just have a lack of weight to them, and it feels like I'm playing an anime instead of playing a military style shooter. The characters move around at like just a ridiculously fast speed, in my personal opinion. Some of the maps are like Rust and Container, or I think it was called Container. In previous iterations of Call of Duty have been very small maps, and they've been very enjoyable maps. But like that, the kill room map on Vanguard, which is literally like a little hut with like 4 rooms, is just kind of ridiculous. In the gameplay, just was not very satisfying. So for a very long time, I went back to Cold War, and it's good that it's charting right in terms of. I mean, what I feel like it indicates is maybe people are doing the same thing that I was doing, which is going back to a Cold War that is much more akin to Modern Warfare 2. And I haven't like we just commented in the opening, in your opening, right? I'm not pre-ordering Modern Warfare 2 until I see a little more commentary on it and have assurances of its stability and kind of hear a little bit about the multiplayer. Again, I'm not a game reviewer or an experimenter. I'm an early adopter for hardware. I am not an early adopter for software. I am more than happy to let other people spend their money and run that science experiment for me, given the significantly greater expense that I sometimes expend to adopt hardware early. So it's just been, wanting to go back and kind of, get into it. And, probably most importantly, even more than just the mechanics of gameplay, get back into the inventory management and the loadout management meta, which you guys know I love my my blocks and inventory slots in a game. And as I commented, when we played the Modern Warfare 2 beta, I much prefer kind of the UI layout in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War in terms of its vertical, and you could see all of it in one screen, and kind of right within one kind of window. I mean, in Modern Warfare, the way it's laid out on the landscape, where there's inventory slots kind of all over the screen, I kind of have to like scan like around the screen to run the gamut of all the slots that are there, which when I talk about Need for Speed Heat, kind of suffers a little bit from the kind of the same thing. Whereas in Black Ops Cold War, it's a list, right? I can see there are 8 attachment slots. When I go into optics, there are 12 slots, right? Or when I go into barrels, there are 6 slots. And I can mentally kind of juggle and manage that and decide, which of those, slots, which of those equipment slots I'm going to select from and put in the inventory slot. Whereas it's a little less intuitive, right, in the landscape layout. So, but I would have a great time, right? Really enjoy those maps. Love, when I went back to it initially, I kind of went back just hitting the assault rifles and kind of building loadouts made of those. But I've spent enough time in it back now that I'm back to, building a loadout of, a couple loadouts of assault rifles, a couple loadouts of submachine guns, a couple loadouts of tactical rifles. Love tactical rifles. A couple loadouts of LMGs. Love LMGs also. Obviously never been as big a fan of the sniper rifles because that's just not my forte. But been having a ton of fun getting back to it.
Excellent. So that is playing to your strengths in terms of diving back into a military multiplayer first-person shooter, but also playing to his strengths is Tao as he dives back into a battle royale. So Warzone 2 is launching not with the release of Modern Warfare 2 next week, but coming out mid-November. So Warzone's sticking around for just a little bit longer, but they're kind of on their final season here, right? That's kind of the theme for this final part.
Yeah. Actually, I thought Warzone 2 was coming out the same day. Oh, it's not?
Unless there's been a new announcement, but I hate to burst your bubble, but yes, you are waiting until November.
All right, that's not right. I was looking it up the other day, and I could have sworn I saw that it was coming out the same. Maybe it was an old article I was looking at, but it's all right. But yeah, I jumped back into Warzone. It's been quite a while, but it's been a few weeks. I think I might have mentioned it a few weeks ago that I wanted to get back into it. One of my friends and I were talking about it a few weeks ago, and just like when the weekend comes, so that's really when I have a chance to play with him for the most part. He hadn't installed it yet. It's pretty large install, so even now still. So he's like, "Oh well, we'll do it next week." So finally, he had downloaded during the week at one point this past week, so we were playing it, and yeah, we were. I mean, I was having fun with it again. Like I think we just got burnt out of it because we were playing it so much before in the past. So we just came back to it. And it's changed a lot. Like even the maps changed a good bit. So it was actually pretty nice to get back into it. And it kind of seems like totally new. Like at least the map's totally new. They got a lot more guns, obviously, because they had a lot of Vanguard guns that they threw in there. Even I think even before with Black Ops 2, they might have added some guns that I had not seen because they're still going when I had stopped. So and Vanguard hadn't come out yet. Yeah, it was still looking for that first win. That's still one of the first, or one of the only battle royale games I've played, and I still haven't got a win in yet. So it's pretty hard when the map's getting really small, and there's still a good amount of people in there, a good amount of teams. So we usually play duos. Sometimes we play trios, but for the most part, we play duos. There's still a lot of like teams left, even when it's like pretty small. So I mean, we're usually just getting shot in the back. We're just getting pinched, as we say, because there's like people everywhere. So we just have to find the right time to to get that win. We've gotten close a few times, but still eluded us. So we're still looking for that first win. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun. He was looking up like the better guns to use, mostly because of the Vanguard stuff. So we were kind of like putting our loadout. Now, when you do the loadout for the Warzone, those comes out on the airdrops. So you don't like start with it, obviously, because that'd be kind of everybody would have their best guns right away. So the airdrops come down every once in a while. I think you can buy them too, or find them somewhere where you can just throw it out yourself. So it's kind of nice. So but as we found out, and it wasn't. I don't remember this happening too much when we were playing before, but a lot of people are camping the airdrops now. So and a lot of times they're kind of out in the open, like if you're in a city area, they're kind of out in the street or like a little town. They kind of fall in the right in the middle of a street. So I mean, it's kind of easy pickings, I suppose. But we're kind of adjusting our play style now and kind of getting used to that. But yeah, I mean, one of the reasons, even before, like, I had totally forgot about Warzone 2. I remembered about it this past weekend when we start playing again. I just wanted to kind of go back and play it. But now that Warzone 2 is going to be coming out, I kind of want to just kind of get back into it and kind of reload the controls and stuff like that. Just kind of get used to it again. But I'm having a lot of fun still. I still want to play it, so keep going until the new one comes out.
Nice. And that new one is out November 16th. So the week before Thanksgiving is when Warzone 2 drops.
Yeah, to add context to that, it seems like what they're doing is they are, in order to level the competitive playing field, they're not giving people a chance to get into that early. And if you remember the way, at least since, Cold War, and I think Modern Warfare 2 worked this way too, the game comes out, there's a few weeks of multiplayer, which generally is when people will focus on kind of getting through the basic military ranks and trying to hit prestige. But then the first seasonal content doesn't actually start until after release. So that Warzone 2 launch is concurrent with the start of Season 1, so which makes sense for the Battle Royale.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yep. So then you have your cross progression across modes there. Yep. Smart. All right. Speaking of season passes, I picked up the season pass for a new game this week, and it is Marvel Snap. So Marvel Snap is the game that has been out in beta for a little while. This is a card game on mobile and on PC. It's free to play, and it is by some of the former directors of Hearthstone. The lead developer in this game was the director on Hearthstone from 2016 to 2018. Hearthstone was a game that I played early, probably 2015, but never could keep up with the meta of it. And I've dabbled in a variety of card games over the years, but while I'm not picking up Gotham Knights, even though I love those characters, the beauty of Marvel Snap is how many deep pulls they're getting even early on, and the fact that there's a lot more cards and characters that are not even touched that I've seen so far and played against. So there's a huge potential for a staple of cards to be pulled here. Marvel Snap works out. It plays out a little differently, and actually it makes it a whole lot more accessible. At least I think so. That it ends up being that you're building a deck. Your deck is only 12 cards, so you don't have a lot to juggle there. And instead of directly battling another player, you are kind of competing over control points. You have 3 locations on the board, and whoever has, whoever wins 2 of the 3 locations wins the match. And that's done by power, by buffs, debuffs, but each location has some special elements to it. They've got, some create, that you lose power every turn or that you gain power every turn. And they're all themed in with Marvel locations, right? Like, so if you're in the Frost Giants world, your characters lose strength, 1 power every turn. If you're in, you can be in the Kingpin's hideout, and if you move a card there, you die. the card is destroyed. So each of them has some different themes to them, and that means that you're building a variety of decks to play out on things. Right now, this past weekend, they've got an event going on where a certain location that kind of creates your buff or your on reveal power of your card happens twice, and so that happens more frequently. But then you also have players and cards like the Scarlet Witch who can change the location, that she'll change it to a random location. So if you're losing or you're not liking the parameters of that location, playing the Scarlet Witch card can change that. You've got cards that fit up nicely with their characters. Venom devours their cards. Carnage devours other cards. You've got Colossus that can't lose any power. So it is around. It has the whole snap aspect is kind of like doubling down in a poker game, or in a card game. That if you think you're winning, you can snap, which then doubles the amount of cubes, cosmic cubes that you would win, basically the currency. And if you if the other player matches that snap, then it doubles it again. And so you're kind of wagering on how well you think you're going to do, and you can let it go and not lose as much or win as much, or you can kind of gamble. But you also have the ability to retreat if you've realized like there's no way to potentially you lose one currency in that. And the currencies are not paid currency in this. It is they're just kind of your rank of your competitive mode. And so as you move up in ranks and as you move up in the matchmaking seems to tie together where you are within your rank and also where you are within your card collection. So it's not simply like you could tank a bunch of battles to then start winning again, that your card collection based on the number of cards you have and how frequently you upgrade your cards, and upgrading them doesn't create any extra power. It's simply cosmetic. And so really most of the paid aspects are cosmetics, and there isn't anything, it may open up more cards. Like if you bought currency, if you bought kind of some of the materials that upgrade cards, yes, you would increase the more cards you could have, but that also means that none of them, they're balanced pretty well. And at least at this point, there doesn't seem to be, you could build decks around a variety of things, but it isn't simply just buying additional new cards to have a stronger deck than your opponent. So I've put in about 18 hours into this game over the course of the week so far. It is in between segments at work. It is at night. It is one of those one more game type of things. So very enjoyable.
Is it PvE and PvP?
It is only PvP. So there's no kind of single player content. You're simply just battling each other.
Okay. And enough people playing the game, your matchmaking and queuing is pretty easy?
Right now, I mean, it's the first week that I haven't waited more than 5 seconds for a match. So, yep. And the fact that it's out on Steam as well, I think probably should help its player base. But it's also something that has been in beta for the last 4 to 6 months. So there's an existing player base there to kind of tap into as well.
Do you see a lot of parallels with Hearthstone in this game? So you said there's a couple X devs, right?
Yeah, a couple X devs. I mean, I feel like some of the the kind of basics of your mana more or less increasing round after round. 6 rounds is a standard. Those pieces, but it functions differently because there's not a player character and then cards that you're throwing out onto the battlefield. It feels much more. Other people have commented this online. Like, it could very easily work as a physical card game as well, because you're battling over kind of 3 points on a map. It ends up being a little more simple than what than Gwent or Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra in terms of other kind of card battlers, collectors that are out there. So we'll see. We'll see how what the longevity of it is. We'll see how their pricing works. Like Battle Pass is $10 for, I think it's a 3-week or 4-week Battle Pass, for the season pass type of thing. We'll see if they monetize additional things that they have right now. But it's very accessible if you're a card battler fan or a Marvel fan that has never played a card battler before. There's a very easy on ramp to it as well.
Yeah, you said $10 for 3 to 4 weeks, right?
I think so.
For the Battle Pass.
Yeah. Am I wrong?
I was wondering because that seems a lot for only like 3 to 4 weeks. Because I'm used to like a Battle Pass being like 3 to 4 months, for the most part usually. So I don't know. And plus, this is only mobile, right? As far as we know.
Yeah, it's mobile and PC. I mean, it feels
PC, okay.
The Battle Pass. I guess I'm a little more. It feels very mobile centric in terms of its Battle Pass. Like the Diablo Battle Pass was 4 weeks as well.
Okay.
So I think there is and this is the launch one, so maybe that is a shorter period of time. But it is also, it's only 50 levels before you kind of tap out at it.
Oh, okay.
So it's not super huge. I mean, I think on mobile, it does seem like there's a faster Battle Pass churn because they're trying to kind of keep that engagement there to keep the spending up.
That's true. Yeah. Okay.
So we'll see. All right.
Go ahead. You've only played on mobile, right? You haven't played the PC version.
Have not played the PC yet to see how it runs or if there's any differences in the UI.
And are you playing on phone or tablet?
I'm playing on phone right now.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with you. I think my guess is the reason for the shortened battle pass is at least for adults, and I just don't know what their telemetry is on what their user base is, but given that for adults, like your phone is probably, I mean, for some casual adults it is, but for a lot of hardcore gamers. Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Hardware mouth. There we go. Yes, for hardcore gamers.
For hardcore gamers, that your phone is not your primary gaming device, and like when Tao says, hey, you pay $10 on PC or console, and the Battle Pass goes for 3 or 4 months. Well, that's because that's a instantiated like hardware fixture in your home, and you're likely to keep coming back, right? But on a mobile device, like if your attention isn't kept there and you're not kind of forced into that feeling of FOMO, it's a good chance, you may not come back to that. Like I uninstall apps on my phone like all the time, right? So yeah, I don't know. Interesting model.
I agree about that. Like there is this, the quick churn of mobile apps themselves, but I think this is where it has maybe a leg up on some other card battlers because of the quick battles themselves. Like it's easy to jump into, and I've already done this over the course of the week. Like I'm waiting in line somewhere or I'm filling up gas and I can do get one match in between the time I start the pump and the time the pump is done. So, it is very quick and it makes it easy because it's on your phone just to kind of jump in and out without a whole lot of commitment.
And I assume when you say that, you don't have a Ford Expedition or a Humvee.
Yes, exactly. Right. Right. I mean, I'm still putting plenty of money in, but no, this is a tank of, short distances. All right. But speaking of some extra distance across the pond over in the UK, not only has there been more political drama and upheaval in the UK this week, but last week on the show, we talked about the UK, the CMA, the regulatory agency reviewing the Microsoft acquisition of Activision and some of their kind of initial findings, or the fact that they're going into a second round of exploration. And this week, we have another follow-up article here that they are now seeking public comments around the Microsoft Activision acquisition. So Hamp, you had this in the story here. What's your thoughts here on the follow-up, or any details you want to go into?
Yeah, and let me say, it's actually a pretty decent blasted cup of coffee tonight. I've been struggling all week with making crappy cups of coffee, so I'm pretty happy right now. This story.
So is it a different blend, or
no,
not? take a sidebar here for a minute. And as we're talking about legal news, let's take a sidebar and focus on the important things.
I've been going back and forth between the French press and instant, and I just haven't gotten because I use two different sizes of mugs, right? Because I have the full size Yeti, right? And that I use probably one out of every.
Keep going. Brought to you by Yeti.
And I use that probably one out of three, coffee instances, and then I have this red one and a green one that are like this size. And so the exact mix of coffee, whether it's French press or instant, is always kind of different. And I've just with the creamer that I've been using, I just have not nailed it this week. So this is like after a full week of making coffee, this is like the first spot on cup. So
what you're saying is the strong coffee caused the shaking of your hands, which caused your microphone to fall. I
think the problem with the microphone is I've never really noticed it, but like with this mic boom here, the stand, it actually makes a difference which of it's 3 feet on the floor, so it actually makes a difference which one, like the the load bearing axis is on. So I will keep that in mind for future. It's amazing that after 7 years of live streaming, and what have we've been podcasting for like 8 years, that's never been a thing. So, but maybe this Audio Technica microphone is heavier than my other ones.
This commercial break brought to you by your local coffee roaster. Now back to enough to keep going.
So this story over on VG247 by Oisin Kounke, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. UK competition regulator wants to know what you think about the Microsoft Activision deal. Unlike me only nailing coffee once this week, I have unfortunately had to read about the CMA more than one time this week. If you've got an opinion on Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority wants to hear it. That's right. If you've been thinking, golly, I wish I had a way to explain why consolidation on a massive scale is good or bad, then today is your lucky day. The CMA has entered phase 2 of its investigation of the deal, in which is trying to determine whether the acquisition will lessen competition. So now it wants to hear the public's thoughts on the matter, end quote. So I think the way this workflow and sequence is set up is there's an open period to submit commentary on this topic now. I don't think that, it's been unclear to me whether or not the independent panel, because there's been a shift of staffing between what CMA representatives worked on phase 1 versus what CMA representatives are working on phase 2. And I think it's a 3-person panel. I'm not absolutely certain. So the phase 2 people, it's not clear to me whether or not they're going to read these statements beforehand or afterwards. But either way, and I mean, I think hopefully people have seen this in the United States, right, with the FTC and even with the FAA. The last time that I recall we did this in the U.S., it was about net neutrality, in which case there were allegations that there were a lot of fake instances of commentary that were dropped in, sometimes from the same IP address. So it gave the impression that it was misweighted if you hadn't actually checked against that. There were allegations that the FAA, I can't remember which, the FTC had actually checked against that, but yet had taken the supposedly false positives, right, and indicated that those, and weighted the opinion as if it corroborated with theirs. At any rate, but there's this open period of submitting statements now. Then the phase 2 committee is going to render their findings. And then I believe there's a second, not phase, but there's follow-on where, based on those findings, the decision will actually be made on what Microsoft has to do and whether or not the merger is stopped or whether or not they have to come up with some compromises on the deal. And then I believe what I've seen is that you will be allowed to submit opinions after that, after they've actually rendered their finding, I think is the way it goes. At any rate, it's open season. It's weird to me. What's really weird to me is that the CMA asked, as far as I can tell, for global input and not just input from UK citizens, which is really strange to me. And at the end of the day, this also might be a CYA move where it's, they're still going to render their opinion based on what their own leanings are, but at least they'll be able to say, hey, we asked everybody's thoughts and asked for your input, and we read them and listened to them, but yeah, we're going to do, what we decide to do. So just an interesting take. Again, I'm sure there were people running around saying it's unprecedented, but it's not. We've done this several times in the U.S. before, too.
Yep. And as we talked about last week, that this is kind of a political opportunity with the CMA because of the break after Brexit in terms of kind of them kind of creating some authority, stamping their own kind of domain and creating some ownership and space there for themselves apart from EU regulators as well. So, that there is definitely more movement here than we're seeing elsewhere at this point in time. And in part, it is not necessarily anything like a smoking gun but it is more about the politics around everything else. Speaking of the politics around things at Blizzard Activision. Go ahead. Oh, that was my perfect segue.
Sorry for the spike. Just one other thing to add to this. Reports are supposedly also that this week that Spencer and other members of a Microsoft team are planning on actually flying over to the UK to have discussions with the CMA as they begin their investigation.
Which makes a lot of sense considering the kind of the waves that the CMA was making last week in terms of the rumblings of raising questions, that Microsoft getting out and being preemptive and trying to be available for comments and questions seems within their best interest. So now, Hamp.
Wait.
Okay.
I gotta stop it again real quick. So this is a question unrelated to this article, but related to the merger as a whole. So we heard, I think it was Brazil. They said, yeah, we're good with the merger. And I think maybe one other country or something like that at some point this past few months. So if a country does say, hey, say UK says, hey, we don't like this, it's not going through. If only one country, out of however many that they have to go through, says no, does that totally stop everything? I've never really looked into the specifics on mergers like that, but is that how it would work? Or
the way I think about it is I think about it like California emissions, right? So when California emissions go down for automobiles, automobile manufacturers don't make cars that can't be sold in California. Right, they make the whole product line compliant with California because they don't want to, put customers through the ordeal of, I bought this car in Virginia, but then I'm going to move to California and now I got to get some goofy exhaust kit put on it, right? So that's the first way I start thinking about it. And then I start thinking about volume of business and burden, right? And so the main thing that I think is the case is that if the US, the EU, and the UK, right, which are big markets for Microsoft, decide to impose restrictions on how the deal can go down, what that's going to invoke is that's going to cause Microsoft to say, look, what happens if we capitulate, right, to these caveats, right? Is the deal still profitable? Does it make sense for us to go through with? And they'll either argue their point or they will propose alternatives. Or if it gets really, really bad and they think they have the backing for it, they will sue, right, or countersue, right, and claim that whatever given authority is overstepping their bounds. Now, when they do that, they have to build their case and make sure that the prudent thing would be to make sure that they have the backing of, the Senate and the House, right, if they try and do that in the U.S. or, our parliament over in the UK or whatever the applicable body is in the EU. And so I don't think that that's an extreme that they would go to. But I think but at the end of the day, right? But then let's say the CMA lists, give some constraints. Again, I don't believe that Microsoft is to say, well, we're going to operate this way globally, except in the UK, right? We're gonna they're gonna probably try to align their model to serviceability across the entire world. Now that's for markets where there's big weight. If a market has very small weight, they might make the decision, well, our footprint isn't that big there, so we're just going to stop operating, right, in that world or in that geographic area, or those customers can import right, from some other place. They can go buy their stuff from Alibaba, right, or whatever. But for big countries where they have a big footprint, I don't think they're going to operate there as an exception to whatever compromises are put in place. One of the things about the Brazilian rule is if you go to CADE's webpage, they actually say, right, final approval of the deal is dependent upon the findings and rulings of other regulatory agencies. So Brazil's CADE acknowledges that, hey, we approved it without any restrictions, but in order for the whole thing to go through, right, we understand that other people need to agree, and that Microsoft will take that into consideration. There's a lot of misconceptions out there about how this is going to go down. A lot of people ran to Twitter and said, "Oh, imagine Microsoft not going through with the deal just because the UK disapproves." Yeah, Microsoft might not go through the deal and the other thing is, the FTC in the UK and the EU, they talk. So I don't know that it's likely that the deal's going to get disapproved or have constraints put on it only in the UK. It would be super hyper strange to me for that to be the case. I think that you'll see constraints put on the deal in all three of those regions. They might be slightly different, right, in the way that they're put out. But I think the US might put restrictions independently, and the EU might, right? But I don't know that the UK. I think the UK is trying to do a thing now because they've been underneath the EU umbrella for so long, and they're trying to show that they have their big boy pants on, and that their findings aren't. I think they're racing. I think they're trying to get out ahead of the EU and the FTC, and I think they don't want to present the appearance that they're just copying, right, with those two, with the older siblings, right, rule. In the weird case where the UK is actually the older country, right, but it's been superseded in many cases. But I think that's what they're doing, and I think they want to make sure that they show that they're thinking independently, although there are lots of disagreements with the way that they're thinking. But yeah, I don't think there's just going to be restrictions just there. And again, I don't think it's, people saying that, oh, well, the UK can't stop the deal. No, the UK can't, but UK stopping the deal will definitely have a ripple effect that I think Microsoft will have to take into consideration as to whether they go through with it or not.
Yeah, and I guess I posed the question too, and like I said, I usually don't dive into these things because usually when we hear about these mergers and when someone gets bought out or whatever, it's 3-6 months later, 9 months later, it happens and it's done. And then it just seems like this one's being, I don't know if it's just the media or maybe I'm just more conscious of it. I just see more reports about all these things going on in different countries and different things and all that, and different news outlets always reporting on this a lot more than anything else. And it's a huge merger too, a huge buy, so it makes sense.
Well, I think that's because it's not just a huge merger in the gaming industry. I mean, it's the biggest in the gaming industry, but it's one of the largest mergers ever. I think it's actually only been superseded by 2 other mergers. So I think that's part of the reason. I mean, and the gaming community loves drama, right? But I think the reason mainstream media is keeping track of it is just because of its size in comparison to other mergers, and the fact that it's open season to hunt the big tech 5.
I'm sure we'll be talking about it more because it does have a huge impact on whatever decisions are made and however this comes down. But let's move on to some other Blizzard news, and that is back to you, Hemp, in terms of Albany having the opportunity for a union vote.
Well, when I put these in the rundown, I didn't even I've been so exhausted and so overworn by these topics that I didn't even connect that they were 2 Blizzard topics back to back. Nor did I understand that Blizzard had a office in Albany, New York. So this story over on GameIndustry.biz by Brendan Sinclair, who I have a lot of respect for. It's also interesting that so many gaming journalists in my eyes, are on the decline that I'm kind of needing to pan around. And GameIndustry.biz has been a place that I go to very often for news, is one of my central places. But to be quite honest, I don't really know or acknowledge the individual writers on there. But given the way lots of people are behaving these days, I'm gonna have to start paying more attention.
Well, and Brendan Sinclair has been around the industry for a number of years in a variety of outlets, and so has a good body of work behind them.
Yep. And I quote, NLRB rules against Activision Blizzard's attempt to have entire studio involved in election. The National Labor Relations Board approved the Blizzard Albany QA team's efforts to seek a vote on unionization Tuesday, according to the Washington Post. Activision Blizzard had argued that the unionization vote should be put to the entire studio instead of just the QA team's 21 members, in a move that would have seemingly reduced the chances of a vote in favor of organization. Now, one of the things that I love about this article, again, a lot of misconceptions out there about how much developers make in the gaming industry. One of the things that I keep trying to point out to people is that the term developer in the gaming industry is used incredibly loosely, right? To an extent that it is not used in other technology realms and industries. In other industries, I think we make a much greater separation between a developer, a tester, a tech writer, whatever. But for whatever reason, the conversation around the gaming industry uses this blanket term developer, and there's tons of labor categories junked into that, right? Writers, people who don't put hands to keyboard to do a thing technical, right, are lumped into this category of developers. They are not, from a pay perspective. And so when you talk about pay and you talk about developers, those are some well-paid individuals, right, in comparison to a lot of the rest of the country. You're talking about people that are either quite near six-figure salaries or over. Those are programmers, right, people writing code. In this case, these are testers. And one of the reasons that the ruling was decided is because testers, which is the same across the rest of the technology industry, there's a significant disparity in pay between those people and developers. I don't mean this as any offense to anyone, but I'm a hiring manager. I've been a hiring manager for 20 years. I'm not paying a tester as much as I pay a developer. That's just right, and I'm not saying that's my personal choice. Every company that I've gone by goes by something called a compa ratio, which is we wind up looking at salaries within a geographic region for particular labor categories. There are ones that are higher because that's the way the industry treats it. There are ones that are lower. If you're in the technology industry now and you have cloud in front of your name or DevOps in front of your name, you're an incredibly well-paid individual, right? If you have other things in front of your name, right, not so much. Testers have always been, lower paid. There's also a big difference between testers and test engineers, right? Because the skill sets that go along with those labels are significantly different. And so this is one of your lowest paid labor categories, right, in the game development industry, right? And they say in this article, and the reason I love it is because they give us metrics, right? And they talk about the fact that the QA team's low pay averages about $42,000, right? In comparison to others in the studio who earn anywhere from $56,000 to $175,000. And again, when I think of a developer, the way the rest of the technology industry thinks of a developer, I guarantee you that a lot of those people up on the upper end of that, right, are the people who actually have hands on keyboard writing code. So what they said was basically, hey, the QA people have a bigger bone to pick, right, and have such a disparity of pay that it's fine for them to kind of be isolated and vote to unionize rather than junking the whole studio again. And this is another thing that I talk about that people sometimes get wrong. I absolutely assure you that the people up in the upper strata of that income band who are in the six-figure salaries have zero interest in you, right? There's no way in the world, right? Because I would be disadvantaged, right? And a lot of these cases are the differences between exempt and non-exempt employees as well. Exempt employees have not anywhere near as much of an incentive to unionize. Non-exempt employees do, right? People who get paid by the hour do. They don't get the same number of benefits. These are at-will work states as well. That's another big difference. And then people who are working hourly, your hours can be cut. There are different things that can be done to you that put you at a disadvantage that cannot be done or won't normally be done to a salaried employee. So good on these guys. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I just want everyone in the gaming industry who I look at as a fellow engineer to be treated fairly and treated well, since as many times as I say, you guys should not subject yourselves to this treatment. You should get out because there are tons of other tech jobs that you could qualify for at higher pay and better treatment. But since they choose not to, like then whatever they need to do to get treated well, I'm all for. So I'm happy to see this ruling made.
All right, I'm going to move on to our next news story just to keep us moving here. So last week, the former voice actor for Bayonetta, Helena Taylor, there we go, put out a statement on social media where she was calling on fans to boycott Bayonetta 3 because of Platinum Games, the development studio's treatment of basically the offer that they provided her in terms of continuing on as a voice actor. That there was conversation and not a lot. It sounds like low communication, and then being lowballed what she claims at $4,000 for the role. Jennifer Hale, the voice actress who's been in many different things, including Commander Shepard in Mass Effect, then accepted the role, the voice actor for Bayonetta. And over the course of the past week, there's been plenty of social media back and forth where Jennifer Hale, again, is basically as a seasoned voice actress, is supporting Helena Taylor in terms of her rights and anyone's rights to speak and advocate for what they feel is a fair wage. And unfortunately, the internet being the internet also means that there's been some negativity and online abuse for both of these two voice actresses. Come on, guys. So, Hamp, you had this in your story. Am I missing anything here in the finer details or any kind of commentary that you or Tao you have around this news article as well?
Nope, I think you covered all the details pretty well. I mean, my only comment on it is just like you said, like, whatever you feel about the situation, right, whichever voice actress you side with, right, the fact that I have to make that comment, right, just as I said, a week or two ago about, the fact that I have to refer to PlayStation fans and Xbox fans as almost two different political parties, is kind of ridiculous, right, in terms of the types of behavior that we not only support but also enable, right, in the so-called gaming community. Whichever side you take, like there's zero reason, but also you have insufficient facts, right, to leverage, to lob insults or whatever at either voice actress, right? I have a side of the story that I tend to have greater belief in, right? And I would talk about that from a news perspective or an industry perspective, but at no point would I utilize that to cast aspersions on the character of either, because I don't know. Not only do I not know, but as I've mentioned about people who've been casting aspersions at the Gotham Knight development team, I'm not a voice actress. I have never been a voice actress. I've never worked directly in the entertainment industry, and so I wouldn't speak on something that I don't have domain expertise in at least some adjacency, as a voice of authority to help people formulate their opinion. I will absolutely do that about software development. I will absolutely do that about program management. I will absolutely do that about managing a software development project, and people who have profit and loss responsibility, right, in a for-profit corporation, right. But I'm not going to do that about voice acting. So, it is what it is. My overall hope at the end of the day is just for better behavior, right, out of the so-called, again, gaming community. The interesting thing about this, from a Bayonetta perspective, from the perspective is, it's an interesting dynamic, right, as to, right, who owns a role, right? And sometimes, actors or actresses like personify a role, and we all go, oh, I can't see anybody else doing that. But somebody else always does it, right? I mean, look at eventually there's going to be another Indiana Jones, and eventually there is going to be, there's probably going to be another Han Solo. And in fact, there is, right? Different age or whatever. in a lot of cases, I hope I feel like out of respect to Harrison Ford, who's one of my favorite actors, I hope that is unfortunately, after he has left this mortal coil, out of his respect, because I just feel like while he's alive, he does own that role. But roles aren't owned, right? I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. I mean, how many James Bonds have we had? Superman, yada, yada, yada. These things get recreated, right? And people get new opportunities to have takes on them. I don't know that anybody really owns a role. And so, for fans to assert ownership, that just means that, like, that's not for you. When somebody else steps into that role, that thing is maybe just not for you, right? And so maybe you should go do something else. So, I don't know. Tal, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, just on the article itself, I mean, excuse me, it's just the internet, being the internet, unfortunately. I think that's what DB said before, it's not even just, I was kind of surprised too when I was reading this, like, it wasn't just Jennifer Hale getting the brunt of it. It's also Helena too. People are just like, disparaging her, whatever they're saying about her, but it's just like, come on, people, like, let's, it's just, you don't know the whole story, like you said. You don't know, what people get paid for these type of jobs. Well, whether she was, in the right or wrong, saying stuff like that, or, and especially with Jennifer Hale, like, she's just like taking a job. Like, okay, like, I'm sure she didn't like, go to Platinum and say, hey, you're not going to hire her, you're going to hire me. I don't think. I mean, so she's just taking the job. She just wants, she has to do work. So I mean, just like any of us, or most of us, hopefully, have to do. So she's just doing her job. So it's just like, just be nice to people, man. It's just you don't know what's going on in the background. There's he said, she said thing going on here. And we don't know all the facts. We don't know what's going on. Behind the scenes. So just chill. Like, we probably like behind these stories. It's just kind of, I don't want to say they die, but something bigger comes up or something else comes up, and it's by next week, same time next week, we probably won't even hear. Most likely, we won't hear even hear about this or until, I forgot when the game actually comes out. I think pretty soon, isn't it?
I think it's until the game this month. Yeah, it's next week.
Yeah, until the game comes out again, and I keep seeing people on like, oh, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to get it. You're like, just whatever. Just play the game if you want. That's fine. And I understand too if you want to boycott it. I mean, that's that's your right. You can do that. We always say that too. Is like, if you don't like something, you know how something's going. Don't buy the game. That's one way you can kind of change the industry. But obviously, it's got to be a bunch of us to do that to actually do things like that. But I mean. Yeah, that's your right if you want to do that. So I guess that's it for now.
Sounds good. Well, I will just wrap that comment up, because I agree with a lot of what you said as well. But I think one of the challenging things and the disappointing things of fandom, right, is that the anger gets directed maybe and not at the place where the decision was made, right? Like directing the anger at Jennifer Hale as another voice actress was hired. Like you said, Tao, it's not like she came in and undercut or crossed a picket line of a union voice actress strike, right? Like, this is on a developer in terms of whether or not they wanted to pay whatever rate a talent was requesting. And if the fans of that property feel committed to that, whether it's an actor or a screen actor or a voice actor, if people are committed to a person in that role, that's where the kind of social media campaign comes in, not in attacking the person who stepped into that role. But anyhow, we'll all take a step off our soapbox for our next story here, because I honestly don't know that I've thought of Philips as a hardware developer within the gaming space since the CDI. So, Tao, talk me through what are these PC accessories and why should people care?
Well, I don't know if I can tell you why people should care, but I'll just tell you what they're putting out there. But no, I actually thought the same thing. So Philips is coming out with a new line, and I don't know if this is the correct pronunciation, but Evnia or Ivnia. I don't know how to actually pronounce that. A brand of not only monitors, which I guess that kind of makes sense because I think that they do make TVs, or they used to make TVs, and obviously it's a little bit different, but I mean, kind of the same thing. They're making new monitors. So they have a few new monitors. I think 32, 34, and 42 inch size monitors, OLEDs that they're bringing out. Excuse me. And I think a couple of them will be out. I think the 32 and 34, I believe, are coming out by December of this year. And then the last ones will come out sometime next year, mid-January of next year. But they also announced, and this is where it kind of shocked me too, was they got some accessories that they announced, all part of the same line. So they'll have keyboards, mice, and headsets that they're going to be bringing out. And I was like, wow, I didn't think they did any kind of peripherals like that or accessories like that. But I mean, I didn't get a chance to go back and look to see if this is like a totally new thing that they're doing now, or if they have been doing accessories too these past few years, or this past the past years for gaming. But I just thought it was pretty interesting, and I think Swiss actually put this news story out there originally, and it was just kind of a shock, like, oh wow, okay, Philips, cool. But yeah, I mean, I've bought, like, I still have my same. I think I have this mouse I'm using now. It's a wired mouse, Logitech one that I've had for 15 years or so. I mean, this was like a long thing. Even before I got married, I was using this thing. So it's been around with me for a long time. But I've been buying other things like keyboards and headsets. I buy a lot of times. I don't know if I'm just rough with headsets, but they seem to kind of like go out on me, or at least like a portion of it, like the microphone will stop working, or just something will stop working, and it's like, well, okay, I got to get something new. So it's just another. I mean, it's good. It's another brand to look at. And, competition is always good. There's a lot of, but that's the one thing. There's a lot of competition out there for accessories. And a lot of bigger companies, or maybe not so much big companies, but just you got Corsair and, like I said, Logitech, and these have been around for a while. They know what they've been doing, obviously, hopefully, since they've been around so much. So it's just interesting. It'll be interesting to see how these accessories kind of compare with those and how they do. Now it looks like the accessories aren't going to be, your peripherals won't be out until June of next year. So it's going to be a while for the keyboards and mice and all that. So we'll have to see. We'll have to wait a little bit before we see how those actually pan out. But any interest in, or does anybody know if they've done accessories before in the past? Maybe Hamp, you might know a little bit more about that.
So they've done monitors before, and in that space, Philips, which I can't remember if they own the NEC brand or if that was a subsidiary of theirs, or there was some relationship. It seems like there was. They've always been kind of a budget buy, and they've always been like the thing you wouldn't necessarily, for a business desktop and something that I was just doing like word processing and spreadsheets on, sure, but like for a gaming monitor, but no, I would never. The thing that is interesting in this article is they talk about you could sync these up with Philips Ambiglow and manage them via another of Philips announcements last night, the Philips Precision Center, which will allow you to sync and save profiles to the cloud. The truth of the matter is, having tested like a ridiculous amount of this hardware over the last few years, at the end of the day, a lot of how I regard these things comes down to software. Razer has great looking and feeling hardware. They have horrific software, and I have just at this point like exiled them from the studio because I just can't deal with, like, every time I have to bring up the Razer. First of all, there's the attempt to auto install, right, the Razer software very frequently when you just connect a mouse. Then there's the fact that it updates every single time, right? You start a computer and it's allowed to auto start, or you bring it up. And then the fact that it's just unstable, and it bricked one of my headsets, right, in the attempt to apply a firmware update. I used to have a pretty low opinion of Logitech software, but they have significantly improved the Logitech G Suite. So, right, this Philips stuff really is going to, in my opinion, is going to come down to how good the software is. And actually, in my mind, from having tested a lot of these things, simpler is better. Cooler Master, its software suite is incredibly simple, incredibly basic. IQ, the Corsair suite, is significantly more complex. Corsair is the one company that I've seen who can get into that end of the spectrum and do it well. And in general, I would say my desire and my advice for companies going down this path is don't make it super complex. Like make it very simple, because the more complex you make it, obviously, as is the case with all other software development, right? It just gets harder. So, the one monitor that I see here of interest. So in general, I kind of come in this kind of looking at these guys, no offense to them, but I kind of look at them as like mad cats, right? They have in the past provided kind of low end, less expensive hardware. I will keep a hairy eyeball on them, but not look at these as a premium choice. But I will say I am interested in the 42-inch flat screen OLED that they're talking about coming out with, just because I'm looking for monitors that are HDMI 2.1, because I may pick one, because HDMI 2.1 TVs, like my studio is too small with my viewing distance from a TV to get like a 65-inch or a 70-inch. Like there's just no way I'm going to do that. So I keep wanting these things in the 40-inch something range that are HDMI 2.1 that might put on a computer desk that could double as a computer monitor. That I could hook both my consoles up to in one of my gaming PCs. So I'm keeping my eye out for that. Asus has one, but I would like a few more alternatives out there, and it looks like they're doing one. What's weird is I do not understand the 138 hertz frequency. Other frequencies are kind of weird multiples of other things in the video entertainment industry, where like things like 144 and 165 make certain sense because other technologies utilize that multiple. I know of nothing that makes 138 make sense, but maybe that's just something that I'm not like read up on and versed. So I will look that up. So that's just a really weird frequency. But yeah, that's my basic stance on it.
All right, I'm going to wrap up our news section here with streaming is dead, long live streaming. So, as Netflix announced this week, this is not really a news story, but it's really more of a segue into what I've been playing, right? That Netflix announced that they are exploring game streaming as another potential value add to their service. Whether this is simply investor posturing as they continue to figure out how to hold their market share, or this is actually something that they hope to be leveraging with their existing platform, we will see. The fact that it is only exploring means that I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but I will encourage any Netflix subscriber to go out and explore Netflix games offering on mobile, either on tablets or on phone. There's a lot there. In some ways, it is very much a pared down Apple Arcade for Netflix subscribers. That there are a number of games that, it's not a huge catalog, but there's a lot of quality there. It's all microtransaction free. So some things that are, the League of Legends Auto Runner is there, made by the BitTrip guys, and some kind of temple run types of bowling games and small stuff. The game Wonderput, which was a online flash game for a while, is there. There's a new game by the creator of Downwell, Poinpy, which is pretty interesting. But then you also have some big name games, Into the Breach from FTL developers, which has been out on consoles and PC. Is the only mobile version is out on Netflix. Oxenfree is a great narrative game, which the studio has now been purchased by Netflix. Before Your Eyes was a game that I was looking at last year. It's a game that takes place, uses your camera on your PC, that every time you blink, that it changes the scene. It moves time ahead. You're someone who has a terminal illness, and so using it on your tablet or your phone incorporates the camera there as well. So it's one of those where it's easy to kind of, as you were talking about earlier, Hamp, of, installing something, blowing something off on a mobile device and exploring something else. It's been kind of, if you've already got a subscription and you're paying for watching streaming services, there's a number of games that my entire family has kind of added on to their devices over the course of the past 2 weeks as we've been traveling, which is something worth checking out. So I'm going to go from a bunch of small games to a big game on a small platform. So Hamp, you dove back into Metro 2033 on Switch, which you've played before, but it just worked back into your rotation, or what brought it back into your rotation?
Well, I'm a big fan of PC ports to the Nintendo Switch. It's probably what I enjoy playing there more than anything. So it was just kind of a random pick. I've been kind of resorting, right, how I kind of generate my playlist. And even though I've kind of said it before, I don't know that I've really necessarily dedicated myself to it. But, this week I just definitely kind of just gave up in certain aspects for like third-person action adventure, story-driven games. And just kind of, allowed myself to commit myself entirely to the, first-person shooter, PvP, racing game genres, and kind of limiting my exposure elsewhere. And so, I kind of came about this because I wanted to play, a first-person shooter on the Switch, and Metro 2033 is, one of the most highly rated ones. That game has some problems. It actually locked up on me this week while playing it in handheld mode, which is just weird. I don't know
this has been out for a year and a half, 2 years. I mean, should be pretty stable.
I think this was 2020. So yeah, it was early 2020, February 2020. So it's just like there aren't many games that have locked up on me in handheld mode on a Nintendo Switch. Admittedly, right until I bought my second Switch, stopped playing my original and moved it upstairs and, spent some time away from the Switch in its entirety and then picked up an OLED. Like, I haven't played a lot of handheld until I got the OLED. But I just don't recall, any game locking up on me in handheld mode. But this one did. So, and it took me a while because I kind of couldn't believe it when it happened. I was like, there's no way this game is locked up in handheld mode. So I tried to convince myself, 9 ways to Sunday that wasn't what was going on. But I had to go back out to the home screen and hit the stop software button and then relaunch it. So, and funnily enough, where I left off, it actually kind of fell off the game in the middle of the week was right at this point where I'd suffered a glitch the first time that I tried to push through it, which is there's a scene where you are with, I can't remember the character's name, but you're trying to get to Riga. And there's a scene where you where you're starting to head across like an underground bridge, and there's like a bus kind of on the edge of the bridge, and you come out of that, and you're about to start to try and head across this bridge, which is broken, and so it requires you to go down these like side paths around some like rickety ladders and staircases and stuff. But while trying to push through that before, I had gotten, and you get attacked along the way, and so I knew what was coming up, but the first time I tried to go through, I got through all the attacks, from all the monsters and to the other side. And after having gone through that, which was a fairly, many combat sequences in Metro 2033 are just very frustrating because you kind of get overwhelmed. And it's very claustrophobic, and it's not like Call of Duty. It's not a run and gun shooter where you have a ton of capability. Like, you're always kind of overpowered. So having fought through all that, I got to the other side of the bridge, and then I hit a glitch where I fell down through the bridge. Graphically is like two different planar objects, and I fell down below the first one. I just kind of melted through the floor, and then got held up by the second one. So I was stuck in between the sandwich of the bridge, and there was no way to get back up, to where I was, on the upper planar object. So I had to go back and play that all over again. So I was like, yep, I'm holding up here. And then kind of as the week went on, I just kind of fell off just because, and I enjoy Metro 2033. It's a great story. It's heavy, it's heavyweight. It's kind of plotting. It's claustrophobic. It's a wonderful narrative experience. It's not a great action experience, not in terms of its design or its graphical fidelity, just in terms of mood, right? It just doesn't always hit me, right, where I want to be in this kind of drab, morose kind of world, so like Far Cry, where you're outdoors and there's a lot of kind of big bombastic Michael Bay action sequences always going on. Just Cause, right, is kind of more to my liking. So I always hit these points where I'm like, I don't feel like being in a dark mood today, right? In a dystopian world, surviving in the underground subways of post-nuclear Russia. So, but I did go back and play it for a little bit this week.
Nice. So let's move to something that has a little brighter tone to it, depending on the planet and the world that you're on. Tao, you were back on No Man's Sky, also on Switch. So you've played it on a variety of platforms over the years. How's the Switch run for you? Are you playing in handheld or dock mode?
I've actually tried both now. Finally, I was playing it handheld primarily. Excuse me, and I finally played dock mode a little bit more this past week. And yeah, it plays fine. It's about the same. Graphics don't look really much better or anything or worse. So at least it's got that for it. Because sometimes some of the games could play worse, could play better. It depends on the game itself. But it's running pretty good. I haven't had. I don't think I've had any issues with it. I think there's some slowdown every once in a while. Like it seems to be random. It doesn't seem to be anything particularly I'm doing, but I think it's also my Switch because I got my Switch. I think July or August of the release year. So it's one of the original ones, and I think that's just getting a little long in the tooth. I keep wanting to go and just kind of like factory reset the whole thing and just re-rice everything, but there's some games I got on there that don't transfer. First party games. Pokemon, thank you very much, Nintendo, for that. There's no backup, as far as I know, that you can do outside of the game internally in the system. So I gotta keep it on there. I don't want to erase that data. So I'm just kind of dealing with it for now. But I've had issues on some other games too. That actually, I think that's one of the first games, No Man's Sky, outside of either Rocket League or Fortnite, that I've had issues with. Most everything else, I've never really seen any. Too many issues other than if it's just the game itself, just can't handle it, because it's a Switch. But yeah, I got 30 plus hours in it now, probably closer to 35 now. I'm just tolling away at it, and just every day, pretty much every day, I pick it up for at least an hour or so, and just do a mission or build up my base a little bit, or try to get. I've been reading a lot now on how to get, not quick ways, but a little better ways to get the different in-game currencies that you can get. So I've been researching that, so I can start buying some more stuff. And there's some ways you can automate when on your base, like the electricity, because you need electricity to power everything, of course. How to do that a little bit better, more efficiently. So I don't have to keep going out and farming different materials and stuff like that. So I want to build that up probably this week and get that going, and then I'll kind of just start exploring again like I used to. And I think I mentioned last week too, I want to build like a bigger base other than just like a square or a rectangle, like I have to, just because you have to do it during the tutorial, or I shouldn't say tutorial, kind of through the story as you're going through it. And I did notice that when you play through the story mode, like the main story missions, you do get a lot of stuff free that you can buy too with some of the other in-game currency. So I might kind of start going through the story a little bit more just to kind of unlock that stuff, or at least some of it, like the major, or not the major, because there's like different tiers. Like if you unlock one thing, then one thing, and then there's a bunch of stuff underneath that becomes unlocked. I might just do like the first thing on each of those categories, and then I just buy the rest of it like later on as I'm farming. Because there was one, I think it was the nanites that you get in the game, that I actually built the nanite farm back on I think it was like the Xbox One back in the day. So I'll probably try to do that eventually too, once I get to that point. But it's just, that's kind of the one thing I kind of don't like. There's so many different kind of currencies in this game. It's just kind of annoying sometimes. It's like, oh, I got to get the nanites, and then there's just regular money, your Reddit credits, and then there's things, I forgot what they're called, from the care package, or not care packages, but like the I think it's like the hidden treasures you can find underneath the ground in the different areas, and that's for, I think, unlocking like the base stuff. So it's like, you got to kind of go back and forth, and it just kind of annoys me sometimes. But that's probably my only gripe about the whole thing. But yeah, I'm still having a lot of fun with it.
Nice. Okay, Hamp, you are here to wrap us up for the week. You've got 2 racing games, so let's bundle them together and see which one ends up in the pole position.
Yeah, so are we bypassing your rundown of the Netflix games?
I already did that.
Oh, okay. Hey, I didn't know if you were going to go into more detail.
I think it's short, little, fast ones, and a lot of these are games that have been released elsewhere, and some of them we've talked about before. So, yep.
Hey, one question I did want to have on those before I do the rundown, then on the racing games. So, Into the Breach and Spiritfarer, are games that I thought were released under different publishers before. So, in fact, I thought Spiritfarer was released by EA. So, are you aware of just kind of how? I mean, is it that Netflix published them to mobile, or are you aware at all of how those things kind of changed hands?
Oh, so Spiritfarer has been out on mobile. I mean, you could buy Spiritfarer on the iOS store. It's there as a full price or a mobile one-time purchase type of game. So I'm guessing it is some type of there's some type of licensing or contractual piece with Netflix in terms of putting it on that platform without any additional charge, because it still exists on the other platforms. Where in Into the Breach's case, it is only on Netflix on mobile. That Netflix paid for exclusivity of having Into the Breach and that developer on mobile. That FTL is on iOS, but Into the Breach has never been on iOS. I purchased the Switch port of it when it came out for the portability aspect of it, and now I think it was in August or so when it came to Netflix games.
So, and help me out, because I think Tao and I were trying to pull this apart a couple weeks ago, because I don't think either of us have played Netflix games on mobile. When you say it's on Netflix games, is it an app that's on iOS or Android, or?
Okay, so this is where it gets confusing. So you could find the game on the Play Store or the iOS store, but you cannot download it unless you go through the Netflix app. But wait, if you go through the Netflix app to then take you to the store to then download it. It's not that it's on Netflix and then you download it on Netflix. It's that you have to have Netflix installed to go through Netflix to the game to then go to the Play Store. So
like an authentication, basically
for authentication. Yeah. And then, for each of the games, it's got an internet connection that's checking to make sure that you're logged in as your Netflix account. So, it is not as simple as simply just pulling up your Netflix account. And this is where I could see the game streaming on Netflix making more sense, right? Like if they take the things that are already there or add more to it, and simply when you are in the Netflix app and you pull up a game, you can just stream that game versus having to go download it, or at least have the option, right? Like so yes, it is a little convoluted to get there, or even it takes you, if you're on a tablet, it's not, if you're on a phone, it's one of the menu items, but if you're on a tablet, there's not a separate menu for it. You just need to simply scroll through the homepage to find the game section. So there's some UI work that could be done here if Netflix is actually looking to expand this functionality in their platform.
So once you have it installed, are you saying you can go into your Netflix app, which is just your regular Netflix app, and there is a game section where you can go and hit the game?
So once you have the game installed, it's a separate executable. So
it shows up as an app with its own icon, as if it's just a standalone thing.
Yep.
Right.
The only need to go through this to the Netflix app is to download or discover new games.
Okay, and it's just the regular Netflix app. It's not like Netflix and then Netflix games.
Nope, it is. I mean, which is smart, right? It's bundled within your existing Netflix app, and it is then you simply it's authenticating and you're downloading a separate app, which then can run independently.
And I wish we had Swiss on, because of course what this means is that we've essentially entered the launcher wars world on mobile now, just like we are on PC.
Yes, right. And we didn't even talk about that news story in terms of Microsoft's announcement of a game store for mobile as well. So All right. That's a roundabout way of getting back to both our news stories and my Netflix games. Chances are, especially around the holidays, as I'm traveling, I'll probably come back and talk about these a little bit more because there's some good value there. Again, if you're already throwing money at Netflix, whether you want to or not, but if you are, might as well have some value add there.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to ask those questions. I didn't realize you weren't coming back to it. So what I've been playing is again, I've just been committing to the love of racing games, and so I know people will say, "Oh, but Hamp has always played racing games," but I have, but like I've had racing weeks, right? But not just I haven't hit those points before where I'm like, I'm only playing shooters and racing games, which is just kind of the point that I'm at now, with a few rare exceptions. And we'll see if I get tired of that, but that's where I am now because I hadn't been playing racing games. And actually my Xbox Series X is kind of interesting right now because if I brought it up, the only thing on there is Forza, Dirt Rally 2.0, Grid, and Need for Speed Heat. It's nothing but racing games. But I have been playing all of those except Grid. I haven't gotten into Grid yet this week, but I have been playing Dirt Rally 2.0 on Xbox, which is a Codemasters game, obviously. And playing so made me realize that I'm really ready for Dirt Rally 3.0 and wondering where that is. But 2.0 is on there. It was originally an Xbox One released game. The game has a 4K mode, and so because I've been recording, I've been playing it in 4K 60. It normally runs at 2160p, but kind of does in the days before VRR. Kind of had a sensing mode where if it was struggling to maintain 2160p, it would drop down to 1800. Game, in my opinion, looks really great on PC. On Xbox, sorry. On the Series X. Normally when I go into a rally game, I really love playing the classic rally mode that kind of mirrors the formal, rally, FIA Rally Championship. But in this one, I've been playing a mode that I actually haven't historically played a lot of in Dirt Rally 2.0, which is the Rally Cross mode, which is this wheel-to-wheel racing mode on kind of some closed loop kind of dirt tracks. And it has a really format. I'm not sure if this is actually a real sport. I've always assumed that the Rally Cross stuff, didn't match 1-to-1 with whatever the sport, format is. But it has this format where you kind of race in heats, essentially. There are 4 different heats. You're assigned to one each one. You race 4 rounds. And then after that 4 rounds, the people who are in the top 12 go on to the semifinals. And you place in the top 12 based on time. So if you race in a heat with, sometimes you're with 4 other cars, sometimes you're with 5 or 6 other cars. If you race in a heat, and let's just say for crazy instance, all 4 cars in your heat are the 4 slowest cars amongst all the people in the other heat, you're not going to be in the top 12. You're going to be in, number 17 or whatever. So you race that, and then you race 2 semifinal races of 6 cars. And then there's a thing called a Joker lap where there's this extended part of the track. And so, if races are either a 4-lap race or a 6-lap race, and on at least one of those laps, you have to take the Joker extension. So it's always interesting kind of picking when exactly you're going to take that. Sometimes it's a matter of just, whether or not you fooled yourself into thinking that you're going to win the race, not realizing that you haven't taken the Joker lap. And the Joker lap will add, it gives you actually an analytic that tells you how much extra time is the average extra time in the Joker lap, 3.5 seconds or something. So you have to take that into account. The game has Rallycross mode has false starts. So if you jump off the, it doesn't have auto start off the line. So if you jump off the line, it gives you a 30-second penalty. And the race starts over. It's kind of, if you've ever, been to a kid's swim meet, the kids jump off the line and, are halfway down the length of the pool when people are yelling and screaming at them, and they just have to restart. So there's that. It's really awesome. I've been racing, in the swing arm camera view up kind of behind, looking over the shoulder of the car, and in the first person mode, in the cockpit of the car. It's been really wonderful. Replays look great. I've had a great time with it. The other game that I've been playing is Need for Speed Heat.
I stop you for just a minute?
Yeah.
Just to lay bare my own rally ignorance. So, is the Joker lap something that is part of the actual sport, or is that a video game-ified addition?
I don't know. I'll have to look that up. I don't. So when I've watched Rally, I've just watched FIA World Rally Championship, which I don't think has Rally Cross in it. I don't know if Rally Cross is under the FIA rule set or if it's kind of another league or sub-sport. So in past versions of Colin McRae, it was a totally made up. Like the way Rally Cross was implemented was totally made up. But these Rallycross events are also in World Rally Championship, which follows the actual structure of the sport much more closely. In that game, you don't race wheel to wheel together on the same track. You race on split tracks, and so one car is on each side of the track. But they are heats and stages within the World Rally Championship, and that I believe is part of the actual live, real world structure.
I'm looking it up right now that the GCR Joker Lap is shorter, while the FIA World Cross Rally the Joker Lap is longer than the main route. So there you go.
Yep. So that's that. And then I've been playing Need for Speed Heat on Xbox, which is as I mentioned, is one of the Need for Speeds I skipped because the game hasn't reviewed particularly well. It didn't cross my threshold of where I would actually dip in and pay for it and buy it. But it's on Game Pass now. I should also mention I have Dirt Rally 2.0 at least for PC. I actually have to check and see if I own it on Xbox. I pulled it down off of Game Pass, just assuming that I don't own it on Xbox. But I've definitely been playing Need for Speed off of EA Play through Game Pass. And as I mentioned a couple weeks before when I first went into this, because I've actually also been playing it on PlayStation 5 via PlayStation Plus, because it's in that library as well. It plays remarkably well. It's definitely not up with Most Wanted. And when I talk about Most Wanted, I talk about the original, I think, 2005 game with the black Mustang on the cover, not the Criterion travesty that was the intermix of Need for Speed and Burnout that I wound up not being a particular fan of.
You've never mentioned that before.
So, the game is surprisingly better than I thought that it would be. One thing I would say from a graphic perspective, this is the first Need for Speed that I can really think of where I really had a degree of clarity in racing at night. Need for Speed has historically, in my opinion, not been very well lit. When you're racing on a dark track, it's always kind of been a muddled mess. Maybe Rivals wasn't as bad, but Need for Speed Carbon, I was, on the PlayStation 3, I was always it's a stinking night race. I can't, everything's a blur. I can't see anything. But this one is surprisingly clear. It has the same problem to a certain extent with time management that I have historically had with Need for Speed games with the Hot Pursuit mode, the open world Hot Pursuit mode. Hot Pursuit was actually manageable because the Hot Pursuit remake and Hot Pursuit because it was Hot Pursuit within a race, right? So it ended. This is kind of open-ended, a lot like the second Most Wanted was, where you're on your way to a race event and you get sniped by the cops and a chase ensues, and that chase keeps going, kind of a la Grand Theft Auto, until you slip the cops. And you can't pull into a safe house while the chase is still active. You have to, increase your lead and evade and get the chase to end. And so, actually, right before the show, I got involved in a chase, which was not my intention. I pulled up Need for Speed Heat saying, I'm just going to play 3 events and then I'm going to make it to the podcast on time. But I got trapped in a race and of course this in a chase. And of course this chase went on for 20 minutes. And at the end of the 20 minutes, I got busted. So I lost any cash that I had generated. So it's just, I get it. It's not so much a complaint against the design, but it's a thing, right? It's a kind of Destiny 2 thing where, when you sit down to play the game and you anticipate that you're going to be able to put it in a time box, that is sometimes not the case. It handles drifting the drift controls are a little different to me. Drift controls on most other racing games, you induce by hitting the handbrake and swinging the back end out. This one is really super. Actually, it only responds. It does not respond to you trying to drift off the handbrake. It responds to you completely letting off of the gas and then wailing back on the gas, which other games do, but they're just not quite as responsive. Like, it's pretty amazing how precise the drift model is in response to that type of control input. And I've finally gotten a handle on that, which just makes all the world of difference in some of these races, because some of the corners are like explicitly designed for you to drift the corner. So I've had a lot of fun with it. I think the last thing I'll say on it is the other thing about this game is it's a little like Carbon in where it kind of breaks away from some of the other Need for Speed models that have historically been oriented around kind of a survey sim, let you collect as many cars as possible. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, the remake, was like this. The original Hot Pursuit was, well, the second Hot Pursuit was also kind of a remake or a redesign. The first Hot Pursuit was also this way, or Hot Pursuit 2. But Underground and Carbon were kind of more oriented around you like getting in a car and sticking in that car and upgrading it and doing, all the cosmetic stuff. And it's there's a long loop to this. You earn kind of slowly, maybe not as stingy as like a Halo Infinite or a Back 4 Blood, but it's a slow progression model to collect all the performance parts. Especially, you can actually collect the cosmetics a lot faster. They unlock because you can only progress up the part unlock mode, and like it has a day event track and a night event track, and day is where you earn money and night is where you earn both money and rep, and you only unlock access to performance parts based on rep. So that progression path is a little slower. But I finally started to kind of unlock some of those, and again, the model is really emphasizing you like getting in a car and sticking in a car and upgrading it over time, which, I like survey sims, right? But this is also kind of really pleasant too, because you get really familiar with the car, you get really comfortable with it, you get really comfortable with the performance profile, and how it handles and whatnot. And this Nissan 180SX that I originally bought was just like a complete loaf of bread when I first got it. But it's now that I've gotten drifting down and I'm adding some performance parts on it, like it's just really satisfying, right? Just kind of like Destiny 2, like getting into a character and sticking with that character and progressing it over time. It's a little bit of that kind of effect, but for a car. So it's been a lot more enjoyable than I had planned.
I appreciate that deep dive there on a game that came out in 2019, right? Like, I mean, I think that, and I say that not in a snarky kind of sarcastic way, but there's a lot of, and as we head into this season of, big releases and a lot of releases, there's a lot of fun and enjoyment to be found in pulling through and kind of digging into games that you've kind of skimmed over, games that you might have not picked up before, games that you passed on because of reviews that now are part of a subscription service that we're all paying for. So thank you, Hamp, for kind of giving us the rundown on Need for Speed Heat. I remember playing it when it first came out. I found the racing enjoyable as well. I think the setting is good, and I appreciate your perspective on from somebody who gets under the hood a lot more than I ever do in a racing game. So, gentlemen, anything else before we wrap up tonight? All right. So join us back next week. Next week will be episode 265. Towmaster U will be hosting us as we head into, this is our Halloween episode, although we probably are not going to be dressed up in costume, just in case you're anticipating that. Although I'll be shocked if somebody does come dressed up in costume, and that will make for a very good discussion. But as always, we're going to have a good discussion no matter who's here, no matter if we're dressed up. We hope and always want you to stop by, join us in that discussion, because this is part of what we do in terms of why we do this is having the conversation around the games that we're playing and the industry that we are fans of here on Enough to Keep Going. It gives us an opportunity to kind of peel back some layers, talk about our experiences, and share those enjoyments. So For myself, DBQ Hams, Hamp, and Towmaster, play the games you love. Come here to talk about those games with us and with each other. So for all of us here, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.